questions just to get the ball rolling. We do have a microphone here, so if people wanted to start lining up, if you have your own questions for Jim, after I've asked one or two, I'll throw it open to the audience, and you guys can. This is called the Spotlight Q&A, so you guys, we want them to ask the questions and you to give the answers, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, yes.
Go the other way around.
Are there any questions you have for us?
Try that next year. The last time you were here, Skin Game had only just come out. Now that it's been a while, hopefully we can talk a bit about it without spoiling too much for people. So how long have you known where the Sword of Faith was going to end up?
Oh, since that would have been right after I started writing Deadbeat, because Butters originally started off as a throwaway character. I was writing a particularly gruesome morgue scene, and I wanted somebody there who could levy the gruesome with a little bit of humor. So I just stole the Emmy from The Prophecy. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. The Christopher Walken is an angel movie.
Yeah.
And I said shh. But yeah, I just stole the morgue attendant from there and dyed his hair black and made him Jewish, and that was Butters. And when I was getting set to write Deadbeat, my editor called me up and said, "Hey, what do you think about doing for this next story?" And I'm like, "Well, it's going to be a little bit more of a quiet story. It's going to be, kind of centered on Molly and her role in becoming Harry's apprentice and so on." And she said, "Yeah, you might want to rethink that." And I'm like, "Why?" She says, "Well, you just might want a story that's a little bit bigger, that's a little bit heavier, that's a little bit more rigidly interesting." And I'm like, "Are you saying I'm going to hardback?" And she says, "I did not say that." "But you should think about that." And I was like, oh my gosh. So I decided to up the T-Rex story by a book. And at that point, I was sitting there trying to figure out what sidekick Harry's going to get for this adventure, because Harry always has a sidekick who is kind of the main person helping out on any given story. And I was thinking about, well, he's going to be going up against a bunch of necromancers. Who do I get? And then I started thinking about it. I was like, you know what? That little mouthy ME would be good, because I need to write this as an entry point for people, because it's going into hardback, so it's going to be the first time a lot of people see me is in this book. And if I bring Butters in, he's a complete newbie and to the whole supernatural thing, and he's smart, so he's going to be asking lots of questions, which is a great way to get information to the reader without making the reader feel like a dummy. Is you have a dummy who's in the story who's asking questions of information the reader needs to know. So that would be perfect. Plus, it's just thematically perfectly appropriate that when we're dealing with necromancers and zombies, your sidekick should be the morgue attendant, because in theme that's perfect, because he deals with bodies all the time. But in practicality, he's useless, which makes things worse on Harry, and I'm always in favor of that. So I mean, but at that point I realized, oh wait, about a third of the way through the book, I'm realizing, wait, I really like this little character. I'm gonna have to do more mean things to him in the future. And so once I realized that, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we're gonna start getting this set up now. So.
Great. And following up on that a little bit, you mentioned Butters, who obviously was his polka skills did eventually help Harry out in that book.
Yes, relevant.
And you set the series in Chicago, which, it's well known for gangsters, and you've got gangsters. It's well known for pizza, and you've got pizza. It's also really well known for the blues. Are you ever going to go there?
No, I'm not going there, because Chicago might have some blues, but Kansas City is the place for blues. And so, just suck it, Chicago.
The almighty internets have informed me that you will let us all know the release date of Peace Talks when you have finished writing Peace Talks. I don't suppose you finished it last night in your hotel room and want to make an exclusive announcement.
No such thing happened.
All right. In that case, let's open it up to the audience. Has anybody got a question?
So you've written short stories from Molly's point of view, Sharon's point of view. Whose point of view besides Harry do you like the best, and in the future, what kind of stories can we expect of that nature?
In case people didn't hear that, the question was, of the short stories points of view that Jim has written before, whose point of view does he like writing best other than Harry's, and that we can expect in the future?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be circling back to any of the people I've already done a short story for. I'm working on one right now that is, it's a 3-part short story. It's one of those Russian doll short stories where it's a slightly different point of view that changes the story each time you go through it. And it's Harry and Maggie and Mouse going to the zoo on their first dad-daughter outing. And it's very challenging to get that done because they're very different people. And these Russian doll stories are fiendish. I don't know what sadist came up with, actually what masochist came up with those. But I'm working on that one. As soon as that's done, then I'll have enough for another anthology, and I can just say, here's another short story anthology, and we'll get all the Dresden Files short stories that aren't out yet, and we'll get that put to, or we'll get all the Dresden Files short stories that aren't in side jobs, and we'll put them in the second anthology, which is going to be called Briefcases. So, but yeah, I really enjoy writing from other characters' points of view because you never see Dresden from the exterior point of view. You only see Dresden from his point of view. From his point of view, he's this big, goofy nerd. From the exterior point of view, he's a frightening psychopath. You know? I mean, he never makes eye contact with anybody. He's always mouthing off. You know, he's this huge, looming presence. And you don't really get to see that from Dresden's point of view because he knows he's just the goofy nerd who would rather be at home reading a book. You know. So that's always a lot of fun. Writing from Marcone's point of view was very reptilian. That was unpleasant. Murphy's point of view is I've done a couple with her, and she's always fun. I did the Molly point of view story that came out recently. Poor Carlos, man. If you haven't read the story, I'm not going to spoil it, but poor Carlos. Let's see. What was the most recent one I did? Lucio. I did a Lucio short story that's set in 1886 or so. And she's hunting necromancers in the Wild West. So Lucio goes to Dodge City. That was fun. Take on all the zombies from Boot Hill with Wyatt Earp. Or no, not Wyatt Earp. No, wait, it was Wyatt Earp. I was going to say Bat Masterson. I was like, no, Bat wasn't there yet. He didn't arrive in town for 2 weeks until after that. And there was all this historical research. It was ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. I'm not quite sure. I mean, with any luck at all, I'll finish this short story and then have the fortitude to say no to people who invite me to anthologies and never write another short story. They're so awful.
I had a hand right here.
What seems like the longest for you to write? Like, what took the most rewrites?
I don't do a lot of rewriting. The book that took the most rewriting was Grave Peril, but that was my editor's fault. I got to the end of that, she was like, I love this storyline, I love this storyline, I love this storyline, I love this storyline, and I need you to expand on all these storylines and make the book 50 pages shorter. I says, so you want it longer and shorter? She says, yes, and hurry. You know, so the glamorous publishing business.
Got a hand right here.
All the way back in Full Moon, Murphy uses silver bullets to fight werewolves. The question I have is, do the bullets have to be solid silver, or could she have plated or normal rounds?
If she'd just gone out and bought silver from the store, it wouldn't have done a thing for the loop group. Because you'd have to, and you can't make bullets out of solid silver because it's too frangible. Is that the right ballistics word? Somebody, yeah. Basically, if you make them out of solid silver, the pressure inside the barrel just shatters them into dust on the way out. So you've got to make a silver alloy. And who is it that, I think it was Patty Briggs that did a bunch of experiments with one of her gun nut friends.
Yes.
And Patty came up with the right balance of silver and antimony and lead that you could mix up to make a real silver bullet that would actually have ballistics properties. It still wasn't an awesome bullet, but for werewolves, what can you do?
One right here in the front.
I actually have two. First, I'm going to show my husband.
Oh, okay.
His shirt.
Right. Sometimes I'm asleep. Excellent. Yeah.
Second, about 4 weeks ago, we went to Mexico for vacation and had the displeasure, unfortunately, of going to Chichen Itza. I wanted to know what you thought of. We went, and it is a marvel as far as architecture and everything. And, oh my God, they built those things back then, and but there's still, it's creepy, it's ugly, it's not a nice place to be. So
No.
before you wrote that, did you physically go? Did you get to climb it? Any of it?
Oh God, no. I try and stay within my living room as much as possible. You know, I'm essentially a hermit, and then I pretend to have social skills and come out on weekends sometimes to talk to people, and that's what I do. No, I Google Maps the whole thing and talk to some people who've been there, which is how I do a lot of my research, especially talking to people who've been there. But the bunch of people I talked to were like, yeah, that place is creepy. I mean, it's impressive, but it's creepy. It's like, oh, perfect. You know.
Right here.
Why did you decide to set your books in Chicago?
Because my writing teacher wouldn't let me set them in Kansas City, which is my hometown. Actually, the first several books in the Dresden Files, the first several stories in the Dresden Files universe were short stories from the point of view of Nick Christian, Private Eye, and they were set in Kansas City. And I wrote those in 1993, 1994, something like that, as class projects. And when I started, but that was in the short story class, and when I graduated to the writing a genre fiction novel class, which was, and what you did for that class and what you got graded on was write a genre fiction novel, and then they graded you on it, and you know, my teacher would grade me. And when I started writing the first part of the Dresden Files, she's like, you can't set it in Kansas City. I'm like, why not? She's like, you are already walking close enough to Laurel Hamilton's toes that you do not need to set your story in Missouri. Pick a different city. And I'm like, what city? She's like, I don't care, any city. And there was a globe on the file cabinet next to her desk, and I just sort of looked at America on the globe. And there were 4 cities marked on the globe in the United States. There was Washington, D.C., and I didn't want to use that because if you write in Washington, D.C., you have to write politics. There was New York City, and I didn't want to use that because all my editors live in New York, and they would know anything I got wrong. And besides, superheroes have got that all sewn up. Los Angeles was on there, and I didn't want to write in Los Angeles because it was Los Angeles. And then what was left was the only other city there was Chicago. And I said, how about Chicago? And she's like, yeah, that's fine, whatever, just not Kansas City. I'm like, okay. So, pure luck.
I think Michael Carpenter back there had his hands up.
In one of your short stories, beginning with Dresden, the little girl Faith, is there anything where you'd bring her back since she seemed to have a little bit of talent or potential for talent?
Yeah, she's gonna be the starting event that kicks off the big trilogy at the end of the series. So when I start the capstone trilogy at the end of the series, she's gonna be the femme fatale that walks into Private Eye's office. So, I mean, she'll be all grown up by then, you know. So.
Right here.
With as many projects and books that you're working on, how do you decide how long or which ones are going to work on when?
Well, first of all, it turns out that what I really, really need to get any work done is a room where I have the unquestionable moral authority to boot everyone else out, and so I can work, so I can just go, shut up, I'm working! And right now I'm living with my fiance who bought her own house with her own money. I don't have that authority there. And the house that I'm building is 15 months late right now. Yeah, you can imagine the joys of that. But hopefully that's going to be, I mean, it's supposed to be done. I'm supposed to move in on June 30th. So with any luck, I will get to work on that. And then after that, it's I have to write. And then my decision process from there is easy. I write I get that short story finished and get the anthology out because that will make New York happy. Then I get the Dresden stuff done because that will make the fans happy. Then I get the next Furies, or not Furies, the next Cinder Spires book done because that'll make me happy. And then after that, the next project after that is I'm going to write a young adult novel. The first of a few young adult novels that is Maggie going to school. So Maggie's going off to, because it's a little dangerous for her to live with Harry, so she's going to boarding school at St. Mark's Academy for the Gifted and Talented, which, as it turns out, is where all the supernatural folks send their kids, and there's a hands-off rule that they say we just let the kids work everything out. What they don't know is that there's also this sort of pantheon of monsters and entities that only can interact with children and that you forget when you grow up. Grown-ups can't see them or do anything with them, and they don't remember that they exist. But kids do. And because there's this phenomenon that I've noticed, and I don't know if anybody has written much about it, but probably somebody has, where there's this culture that children have in our country. Nobody ever teaches their kids the words to Jingle Bells, Batman Smells. Every kid knows the words. How does that happen? I don't know. I don't remember where I learned that song, but I know the words. How did that happen? And so I was like, well, what if we just expand on that and make it into more things? And so I spent a lot of time, kind of working on that. We're going to take a lot of urban legend stuff and work it in. I don't even want to think about the horrible monster that is the result of all those shoes hanging over telephone wires. So, but anyway, that's the. But yeah, we're going to be, and that's that. We're going to be working on that. And poor Maggie, she's been through so much. You can't go through the sorts of traumatic events that she has and grow up just like regular kid who's been safe their whole life. So she does have issues, and she's got anxiety, she's got PTSD, she's afraid of open spaces, she has trouble talking to people or relating to them without being worried that they're monsters. She really does need the service dog with her, so Mouse will be by your side the whole time and getting his own education, which is important. But she has such a problem dealing with people, except when people are screaming and everything's on fire, at which point she's completely normal. She's also very dressed as dogs. But I'm going to have a bunch of fun with that, so that'll be the next project. And those, I'm going to be writing those in tandem with my sister, who's an expert on Catholic schools. That's where all her kids have gone, and it's so great because whenever they would get to a school, they're like, "Oh, it's so nice to have a nice big Catholic family," and she's like, "We're not Catholic, we're just big." They're like, "That's okay, you'll do fine here. Come on in." But that'll be fun because you only have to write 40 or 50,000 words for a novel like that, which means I'm only writing one. There's going to be two viewpoint characters, and I'm only writing one of them, which means I only have to do 25,000 words. So that's enough room to actually work without me wanting to strangle myself with the cord to my laptop. So that'll be. I think that'll just be a lot of fun, and we can just get together for a few weeks and write it together, and it'll be done. And that'll be neat. And then back to the next Dresden Files book, which will be Mirror, Mirror, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Have you heard the summary for that one?
Yeah.
Oh, it's the one after Peace Talks. Mirror, Mirror is the one where I just blatantly rip off the original Star Trek. Harry goes to an alternate timeline that's one choice different, and where everything is awful, and there's going to be eye patches and goatees and everything. So.
Also, all the way over here, Boba Fett has had his hand up for a while.
Oh, good call. Yeah.
One quick question with a quick answer, and then one other question with an in-depth answer. When is the next Dresden book expected?
Everyone's been expecting it for a while now. So.
The other question is, how did you come up with the idea of I'm asking for a friend?
Okay.
I'm so sorry, I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
Denarians.
Versus the Knights of the Cross.
I don't know. I just did it. I mean, I borrowed some from, Simon. Not Simon. I'm thinking Simon Green. No. There's an author, and I can't remember the name of his series now. And it's a good series, but I was reading it when my dad was dying, so I've never been able to go back and read it again. But he actually had there was a magic sword in his series that was magic because it had a nail from something paralleling the crucifixion in his fantasy world in it. Only that wasn't actually the truth. It was actually a magical sword that was magic because some wizard had magicked it. But I was like, well, wait, I'm trying to work, the power of faith and belief as part of the magical system in the Dresden Files universe. So why not have one that actually is like that? It's like, that would be awesome. That would be fun. It's like, okay, but if you're going to have these monumental paladin good guys, you also need to have enemies that basically make them almost irrelevant as far as Dresden is concerned. Because just having them there, you know, I had to set it up to where whenever the Knights of the Cross were somewhere, their job was essentially to make it a fair fight. That was kind of their superpower, is you can't just overwhelmingly say, this is what's happening. No, there's a Knight of the Cross here, you're gonna have to fight for it. And that was the whole point of using them. So in that instance, I'm like, okay, so what I need to do is I need to have about 10 times as many bad, you know, equally bad guys as there are good guys. So I need 30 something. And it's like, well, you know, we've already got nails from a cross, we'll just take 30 silver coins and use those too. You know, that's how that needed to work out. So that was where that came from.
Right here. Yes.
In your years of playing Dungeons and Dragons, have you ever come across and or played the Apocalypse Stone?
No, I have not, sorry.
Right there, sitting next to Michael Carpenter.
Kind of a weird question, but out of all of your books, all the redhead characters are either malaligned or batshit crazy. They on you in the 6th grade or something.
Man, redheaded femme fatales are hot. Have you seen my fiance? Oh my God. I thought I would get used to it after a while. I haven't. You know, so.
Right here. Yes.
Okay, totally lost my train of thought. I know it's from Harry's point of view, but do you have a favorite character in the Dresden Files?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, its favorite is, there's a lot of different, you're asking me about my favorite child. It depends on what I'm doing with them. If you mean like just personal enjoyment in writing, I love writing Bob because Bob can be irreverent in anyone, and that's fun. I love writing Mad because she is just the funnest villain to write. Let me think. For doing emotional revealing stuff, I like Michael and Father Fordle. And for I mean, it just depends on what we're doing. For sheer villainy, Marcone still creeps me out more than anyone, because he's not quite as just ruthlessly mechanical as Nicodemus is. You know, Nicodemus is putting together a watch, and if you're grit in the gears, you're out of there, and that's all it is to it. And there's no sense getting worked up about a piece of grit in the gears. You just remove it, and that's just the kind of person he is. So, you know, for just sheer villainy, he's fun. Toot is a lot of fun to write. He's all depressed because he keeps getting bigger. Yeah, he's kind of in an emo phase now in my head, you know. But anyway, I mean, it's all different things for different reasons. There's different characters that I love because they get to do different things for the story. But it's not an issue of this is the absolute best character ever. Because if you don't think that about every character you do, you probably can't do that. You probably can't do that as you can probably get it right. You know, you've got to when you put characters together as a writer, you sit down and you figure it out. And unless you're writing some ridiculous throwaway character you're only going to use for one book, Butters. And but yeah, I love writing all of them. If I didn't, I wouldn't be doing it. Well, at this point I might be because there's a monetary consideration. But I try not to think about that too much. I try and remember that I'm a 25-year-old writing his dumb little wizard books because apparently that guy was onto something. He's kind of a stranger to me now. I haven't talked to him in a long time. But yeah, 25-year-old me was onto something when started putting this series together. Way more enthusiasm than sense, that's for sure. But at the same time, it seems to be working out. So.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yellow shirt in the front row here.
3 questions. Now, we haven't. Okay, 2 questions.
Okay.
All right. First question. With full artistic license and how you answer this, so you don't give away too much, but just sell. Give us a little bit. We know Justine is pregnant. How's that going to affect her sanity?
I'm not gonna tell you.
Okay, second question.
No wait, I am gonna give you the answer. Justine's got bigger problems. Okay, next question.
With the kid, with the young adult series, since you just mentioned it, and it came to me, are we can we actually expect to meet an actual Lord of the Flies?
An actual what?
Lord of the Flies? Like a Beelzebub?
Oh, well, I see what you're saying. No, not really. Something like that. Something like that. The school is prepared to handle. I mean, they have tried to make it, you know, essentially a place for the kids to grow up and learn how to fight with each other and get along without getting mauled by their parents' foes. So whenever anything untoward starts happening, then someone swoops in and deals with it. The way Harry swooped in, the way Harry and River Shoulder swooped in and dealt with the problem when Irwin was at that school. So. Yeah, I mean, we won't be running into the standard Dresden Files universe stuff. I've got new stuff that I'm putting together for it. I mean, we will, but it'll be kid level problems, you know, kid level goblins, you know, that sort of thing, you know. But it'll still. I mean, I think it'll be a really fun book. It's gonna go in a slightly different direction. If you really wanted to ask a third question, you'd ask me about the spin-off series, but you only got two, so.
On the aisle right back there, yes.
I was lucky enough to see your panel 2 years ago when Skin Game came out, and I loved your wig of Peter Dinklage. So actually, I was wondering if you have any other little mantras that go through your head that you wanted.
Oh God, so many little things that go through my head. I got an old one that stuck in my head the past few days. Snape, Severus. Yeah, thank you for that. And now you all have it too. Dumbledore. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just occasional things come by on the internet and they won't go away. It's better than having, you know, the song stuck in your head, you know. Friday.
Nope.
Yeah, gotcha. I went there. This room is like 3 times as full as when I walked in here. Oh my gosh, this line outside is outrageous. Yeah.
On the aisle in the back, black hat and glasses. I can't tell whether it's a Blues Brother or not, but.
It's funny that you called him a throwaway character. My favorite is Waldo Butters, and I was curious what inspired you to introduce him, and what inspired you to flesh out his arc, because I cried.
Yeah, well, we covered this, which is not your fault because there's lines outside. But it was because I was writing a gruesome morgue scene and I needed some humor in it to leaven it. So I stole the medical examiner from the movie The Prophecy with Christopher Walken, and I dyed his hair black and made him Jewish, and that's where Butters came from. As far as using him as we went on in the story, I decided to use him as the sidekick in Deadbeat because while he was perfectly thematically in theme for dealing with a bunch of necromancers and zombies, you know, the medical examiner dealing with necromancers and zombies. Of course it was thematic. Look at iZombie, they did the same thing. But at the same time, he was completely useless to Harry for actually doing anything important. So, you know, I was in favor of that. And then as I was writing this character and having a lot of fun with him, I was realizing, okay, you're along for the ride now. It looks like you were the walk-on the set, the extra that the audience decided they liked for no real reason, and the producers just went, okay, we're gonna run with it, let's go. That's basically Butters' story. So.
All the way over here. Yes, you.
Just kind of popped into my head as you're answering that. So in that story with Butters, Harry teaches him how to make a circle, and he can do it. So my question would be, how much magic would a non-magical individual be able to do, assuming they know the theory?
Circles are easy. Circles are just, you draw a circle and you want it to be a magical circle, and then you put some blood on it, and that's that. That's simple. Almost everybody could do a little bit of magic in the Dresden Files world. I mean, it's just like, okay, the difference between Harry Dresden and a regular person doing magic is the difference between Michael Jordan and a regular person playing basketball. It's anybody can go play basketball. Not anybody can make the team, and not anybody can make college, and not everybody and even fewer can make the NBA. It's a combination not only of your innate kind of genetically based ability, but also that you grew up in the right circumstances to be able to exploit that potential, that you worked really hard to maximize that potential, and that you had somebody there with you who could show you how to do it. And if you don't have all those things, you don't get a Michael Jordan. And it's the same way. It's the same way with magic. If you don't have all those things, you don't get a wizard. I mean, anybody can start learning it and do it, and can get to be fairly good and dangerous with it. Just like anybody can practice basketball and can practice taking those shots and be able to sink those 3-pointers if you put enough time if you put enough time in on it. But that doesn't mean you can play against Michael Jordan. I mean, you can work all day. If you're 5'5", you're probably not playing a game that's a very challenging game against Michael Jordan, Julius Erving. That ain't gonna happen. But anybody can pick it up and try and play with it. So.
In the Spock shirt right here.
Is Jim Marster still going to be reading the audiobooks?
As far as I know, he is. He's actually sent word to me wondering where the next book is. So. Like everyone else. Yeah, but he apparently really enjoys it, and his fans just love it. So James is a smart guy. He knows to play to the fans. So, but at the same time, it's something that really has to be worked out, because he was the highest paid actor in Hollywood in 2014, 2015, 2016. Just because he has handled his money really well, and he makes a lot. So I mean, he doesn't do it because he needs the money. He does it for love. So that is an amazing choice. I'm very fortunate that he's done that, because everybody loves Marsters.
There's a question all the way on the outside there.
In your books, you do a lot of crossover between different myths, for on the Christian myth, and then also on the Celtic side. Do you have an overarching theme? Are they running parallel? Is there a bigger picture that overlaps all these different myths and brings them together?
Yeah, in my head there is. I don't know if it will ever be something that Dresden really gets deeply involved in. We'll have to see. I mean, he'll be turning up more and more as he goes along, because we're heading towards the Wizard Apocalypse and the Wizocalypse. I don't know, something like that. But yeah, I mean, the overriding goal when I was putting it together is I wanted to have. I wanted to build a mythology for this story that was inclusive of everything. That there was nothing that you just go, nah, that doesn't exist. It's like, no, it exists somewhere, somehow. But at the same time, I kind of went into it with the view that the human viewpoint on all these things is incomplete. We don't really know all the stuff that's happening, and maybe some of the things we can't know because of the nature of who we are in reality. We're these beings we're time travelers who travel in a straight line at a constant rate, and when you're in a car, when you're in a car on cruise control, you don't get to see everything along the way, because you're busy driving in a straight line. It's like driving across Kansas. I've done that a lot lately. But the whole point was that I was trying to put together a mythology where everything would be in, and there was a reason that you could have everything be in. And then once I've done that, then my only limits are what I can learn and know, which I'm not all that bright, so I do my best. But I've written mainly Christian mythology because of the major world religions right now. That's the one I'm comfortable with and familiar with. I grew up kind of on the fun end of fundamental Christianity, as opposed to the mental end of Christianity. And I mean, I've memorized whole books of the Bible, in competition at summer camp, that kind of thing. That's the sort of, I hung out with a group of people that would use the Bible as the starting point and end mark of a foot race, because everybody had them, so why not use them for things? But yeah, I mean, it's like, I wouldn't say that I'm a theologian, but I'm probably more theologically learned than most, and I feel comfortable, talking about concepts within Christianity. So I'm happy you know, I'm happy to work that into a book, but I don't know as much about other religions. So you know, they've been more hands off, and besides, the United States mostly Christian. So I've just been, and that's where the story is set. So
following up on that really quick, how much research do you do when you do go outside of the Christian pantheon into something like a Navajo skinwalker or something like that?
Oh, well, I do as much as I need to make a good story, and to try and make sure that I'm not accidentally ruining anybody's day. For the Navajo Skinwalker, what I actually did was go and lurk on Navajo message boards where they trade Skinwalker stories, and started learning things there. Yeah, that was my. You know, you always, as a writer, you always do research, and you can always do more research. But if you do too much, you sort of vanish down this black hole of research, and the writing gets done.
White shirt with glasses right here.
Hi. As a person of faith, I really appreciate how you've incorporated faith in the books. With so many different types of allies Harry has, what made you choose to have an ally of faith?
I like paladins, man. I mean, I played a lot of D&D. I like paladins. Did you ever read The Sheep Farmer's Daughter by Elizabeth Moon? If you guys haven't read that book, it's a trilogy. It's a short fantasy trilogy. It's self-contained. It is probably the best paladin story I've ever read. I mean, it's just amazing. You go and read it, and you kind of dig into it, and it holds together well on all kinds of levels. So check it out. Sheep Farmer's Daughter by Elizabeth Moon. I mean, it's 3 books. It's totally worth your time. But yeah, I mean, and I wanted that, and I wanted to bring faith in as part of the story, and I was writing a story about ghosts in the afterlife, which is a perfect place to do that. So off I went to do it.
Background NPC right here.
He has a sign. It says background NPC.
Harry's daughter Maggie was born from a woman who wasn't entirely human during it. Is that going to have any effect on her?
Oh, I dare say. You can't just not, you know, so.
Right here.
At your last panel here in Phoenix, there was some grumblings about possibly getting the rights back for the TV and movies. Has there been any movement on that?
Oh, well, no, I've had the rights back for a good long while, since about a year after the show was canceled. They got it back to me. The rights are currently out. I'm not supposed to say who with, but they make movies that rhyme with Wolverine. But it's not exclusive, so they don't have an exclusive. So if somebody else comes up with it, and says, "Hey, let's put this together," then I will be able to say, "Yeah, absolutely, let's do that."
Blue Hand iZombie, I think.
Yes.
Oh yeah, Live More.
Yes, thank you. And that actually leads right into my question. American Gods, I wondered if you'd seen it, and also just, the question was more, television has really changed when it comes to adaptations, and I wondered what your thoughts were about how suddenly they're doing it right.
Haven't seen American Gods yet. As far as adaptations go, though, I think what they're doing is they're spending a bit more time to get it done. If you're running a cable network or something like that, you don't as much have to worry about advertisers. You have to worry about subscribers, which means that you're not doing a show that's going to please the advertisers. You're doing a show that's going to. I mean, that's not your primary concern. You're doing a show that's going to please subscribers. If you're on regular network TV, you need people to watch it, so you need to do enough to watch it, but you have to balance that against you need people to advertise on the shows as well. So when a show goes big, you'll notice that when a show goes big, the show gets shorter and shorter, and the commercial breaks get longer and longer. I mean, have you tried watching Finding Bigfoot lately? It's ridiculous. It's like, here, we're looking for Sasquatch, and commercial break. Didn't find him yet, but commercial break. That's how that show goes. The networks don't have to do that, so they can rely on story. I mean, if the Dresden Files was going to go anywhere, I would want to see it on Netflix. I mean, because Netflix they've done something that is revolutionary in television. They've invested time and patience and waited for it to pay off. I mean, Breaking Bad would have been canceled first season if it had been on any network TV, but it wasn't. And they were able to back off and say, oh, let's wait and see what happens. You know, and the online, the streaming television, and it's meant to be watched it's meant to be binged. You're supposed to be there for a weekend, stuck. And so you can tell that story, and you don't have to worry about all these breaks and reminding people every week about where they've come from. You just got you've got the story that plays from beginning to end, which is what a book does. In my opinion, I wouldn't say expert opinion, but in my opinion, you can get translating to television. You can get a short story does about an hour's worth of TV. It does about 42 minutes of television. A graphic novel, a full-on kind of hardback bound graphic novel does about 42 minutes of TV, etc. So when you don't have to worry about those restrictions, and you can make your episodes an hour long or an hour and 10 minutes long or whatever. You're so much better off. It can be done really, really well, and it can be done, in a mediocre fashion too. And for examples of that, you can look at Daredevil versus Iron Fist. Yeah. I kind of watched that. That one kind of came out kind of blah a little bit, So.
Right here on the aisle.
In a perfect world.
In a perfect world.
Perfect world.
All right.
Who would you have cast as Harry and all, or would you want it to be like a newbie?
I wouldn't mind a newbie if they were good and could snark well enough and suffer well. You have to have someone who can suffer well. You have to have someone who can have the bruise makeup put on and look just absolutely pitiful. It's the only way to do it. Let me think here. I've always said that Will Smith could do Dresden because Will Smith can lip off to anyone, and that's one of the most important character features of Harry Dresden. He would be really, really good at that, and plus he can do the father vibe thing really well too. So that's good. Let me think here. I thought Fassbender would do a good job. Let's see. In the late '90s, early 2000s, I would have picked Vaughn from the show Alias. My actor's name is Michael Vartan, I think.
Yeah.
He would have been good. Let me think. We could go with the young Bruce Campbell. That would work for me. Fassbender, I think would be good. The guy who plays Major Lillywhite on iZombie. He's kind of my pick for now because he can do that kind of offhand snark well, and he suffers. So that would work. Major Lillywhite would do for me. But everybody's like, they're too short. It's like, yeah, everybody's too short. Dresden's 6'9". Doesn't cost me anything to make a character 6'9" or 4'8", whatever. It's all the same. It's all the same to me. I'm just writing words. That's one of those things you find out. It's like, it doesn't cost me any more to burn down Chicago as to not burn down Chicago. But those TV people get all worked up about it. So anyway.
Lee Pace is 6'5".
All the way in the back, I see a red sleeve.
Who is?
Lee Pace.
Lee Pace?
Mm-hmm. Pushing Daisies, The Fall.
Because we could do Lee Pace, and then we throw in Hiddles as Thomas. How's that? All right.
Sold.
All right, make that happen for someone.
All right, get right on it.
So for anyone who didn't hear, the question was essentially, with all of the references that Harry makes, occasionally mentioning brand names or things like that, how do you navigate the legal landscape of that aspect?
Well, for one, I'm a writer, and writers aren't really important enough to be threatening to anyone, because nobody reads, especially in California. Yeah. But anyway, but otherwise, just dropping brand name stuff into your writing is not a big deal, as long as you're not like writing a story about the Coca-Cola factory poisoning 250,000 people or something. I mean, that they might react to. But if you're just saying, yeah, my character drank a Coke, that's not a big deal. That's not.
But we can't say it's run by Satan.
But what?
So we can have a character drink a Coke, but we can't say that Coke is run by Satan.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not saying you can't, but they might get all upset at you. They probably won't, because you can look at them and go, dude, it's a book about wizards, lighten up. You know, essentially. But yeah, I mean, you get a lot of leeway when you're writing fantasy, I find. So far it hasn't been a problem.
Did you have to pay a little bit more attention to that line with the sort of lawyer-friendly cameos that came up in the SplatterCon sort of context?
Oh. No, I just wrote that and wondered if I was going to be in trouble, but it turns out no one really seems to care. So.
All right, gentleman with glasses there. Yes.
I think the first-person narrative really works for the Dresden Files, but your other books, the Codex, Center Spires, are written from a third-person perspective. How did you choose the first person for Dresden?
This is embarrassing. I decided one semester, and my writing teacher had been trying to teach me important things about writing. And I had chosen to ignore the things she was trying to teach me because I had a bachelor's degree in English literature with an emphasis on creative writing. Whereas she had merely published 40 novels. So, one semester I decided to prove to her she was wrong. And the means I chose to do this was brilliant, and because I decided that the way I was going to prove to her she was wrong was that I was going to be her good little writing monkey. I was going to do absolutely everything she said. I was going to use all her little worksheets and her outlines, and fill out her character forms, and check off all the little boxes on her little list. And she would see exactly. I would write in the genre she thought I should be writing in, from the viewpoint I thought she thought I should be writing in, and she would see what terrible cookie-cutter pablum crap emerged from that kind of rigid mechanical process. And so I wrote the first book of the Dresden Files to show I believe I mentioned that I'm not all that bright. So, but she had said, hey, you should try, she'd been telling me, hey, you should try writing a book from a first-person viewpoint. It's the best viewpoint you can take as a beginning author. It's what her teacher, Swain, referred to as perfect viewpoint. Because the idea being that writing a book is essentially, it's essentially the original virtual reality. The entire point is you're supposed to stare at these chicken markings on the page and hallucinate vividly for hours on end. And in order to create that, you have to focus on keeping the reader in the story the entire time. That has to be what you're doing as a writer. And by staying in one viewpoint and not switching viewpoints, that is the smoothest and easiest way to get the reader into a character's head and then drive them around the story like an amusement park ride. And that every time you switch viewpoints, it's like asking people to change cars on the ride, you know, and you can do it, but it has different effects. And beginning authors, normally their problem is their story is too slow and boring. And by keeping in one viewpoint, you kind of keep the road a little bit smoother and you make things go faster, which is what most beginning writers need, and especially it's what I needed, because I was an idiot at that point. But going to third person though, third person viewpoint gives you many more options about how you can tell a story, which is to say, much more rope with which to hang yourself. It's much easier to screw up third person than it is first person. But at the same time, third person also has more potential in terms of what kinds of story you can tell. There's many more options for you to use when you're telling a third person story. When you're in a first person story, you can't ever have the reader aware of something that your narrator is not aware of, for example. Whereas when you're in a third person story, you can go ahead. The reader can know there's a monster on the other side of the door the character's about to open because another character already went through that door and got eaten. And so you can build up that suspense and dread, and that's just one. I mean, that's just one little example of all the different things that you can do with third-person viewpoint stories. So I think the reason that the Dresden Files has managed to stay pretty fresh for me as an experience is that between each Dresden book, I go off and write a third-person story, and that story gives me so many more options and so many more ways that I can practice my craft. That I get to go over there and say, oh, I can try something new over here, and I can introduce new people and new characters, and isn't this guy neat? Look at this world, it's wonderful, and you're seeing it through all these different eyes, and it's great. And that's the beginning of a third-person book. And then by the middle of the third-person book, I'm like, oh God, what am I doing? How can I possibly tell this story? What are all these things happening? I can't keep track right. I don't even know what's going on right now. How can I do this? How do I get out of this without just killing myself? And then by the time I'm done with the third-person story, I'm like, I am so sick of all these choices. Let me just get back in the saddle with Harry where things are simple for a while. And then I write the Dresden book, and that's what the opening of a Dresden book is like. And in the middle of it's like, man, here we are, and this guy, he's making these terrible choices, and he can't keep his mouth shut. And yeah, you're getting beat up, buddy. And then by the end of it, I'm like sick of Dresden. He's like that roommate that you just couldn't stand that semester in college. Because everybody else, you'll read a book and you'll be like, a Dresden Files book. Oh, I read that in a couple of evenings. And oh, that was great, and I'm done. And I'm like, but me, I got to live with the guy for 9 months at a time. So I was sick of him. So by the time I'm at the end of a book, I'm like, yeah, just go away, shut up, Dresden. I'll deal with you later. I have to go do steampunk now. But that's the kind of balance that I deal with. So
I've seen a hand up for a while right here.
Since Dresden is kind of on hiatus, for lack of a better word, no.
Dresden's not on hiatus. Jim is on hiatus. Until I have a house to live in, I'm on hiatus.
Fair enough. Which of your other series would you recommend me getting into on the side? Because Dresden is literally the only series of yours I've read.
Okay, Alara's already done, so you can read that one. It's already finished, and so that'll. 5 years of my life, or 7 years of my life, he'll probably finish it in a week or something. But that's Alara. Alara is a Lost Roman Legion meets Pokemon. That's kind of the theme of Alara. Okay. The new Cinder Spire series we're in at the very beginning, and this one has the advantage of beginning with a book that I kind of knew a bit more about what I was doing when I started writing it. I wrote the first Alara book right after I wrote Full Moon. I still have, there's still like a lot of beginner mistakes in that book because I was about 27 when I started writing it. And I've learned a lot since then, I hope. But the new series should be fun. Oh, and then there's a Spider-Man book I wrote for Marvel over on the side, if you can find a copy, called The Darkest Hours. I liked one of the villains that Straczynski introduced and kind of expanded on that. I got to have the Rhino have tea on Aunt May's couch. It makes sense within the context of the story. You have to read the story. Anyway, so there you go.
Thank you again.
Sure.
And there are also Dresden short stories and comics and role playing.
The magnificent beard over here.
My question was, in Changes, when Dresden is threatening to go into his free notebook, did you know in advance where he was going with that, or did you decide at the moment?
Oh, I didn't know, in Changes I didn't know what was going to happen until I was writing it. There's some things that I decided ahead of time, and there's some things that I have left to the story so that I can make the choices that make sense, for the character as I come up on them. So I don't know a lot of the things that are going to happen. I kind of know the general direction. I know which way the arrow of history points, but I'm not sure about all the details along the way. So yeah, Changes could have gone 3 ways. He could have gone with Mab to back him up to go after Maggie. He could have summoned Lashiel's coin and used that to go get his daughter. Or he could have picked up the Dark Hallow, the book, Kemmler's book, which was still, which he still had in his memory, and used the Dark Hallow and gone after and become this, necromancer lord essentially, and gone after his daughter. And depending on which road he took, it would have been a very different story as we go along. And I wasn't sure which one he was going to do, and he wound up going with Mab, which I thought made sense at the time. Plus, I really like writing Mab. So on the other hand, I really like writing Lashiel. So it's sort of a toss-up. And zombies are awesome, so we could have wound up with that too. Although that would have been terrible because probably we would have had Murphy running around as a secret undead and that kind of thing. That would be a really good story.
That's an awesome anthology idea.
No, go to hell, sir. Oh my gosh. More short stories. No. See, I'm practicing saying that. No.
All right, well, we're about out of time. Did you have any closing remarks you wanted to make?
No, I want to ask them a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Who do you guys want to see more of in the next book?
Molly!
Jeez, guys. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. It was a pleasure being with you this morning.
Jim will be signing with Robin Hobb and Sherilyn Kinnan in North 124 AB from noon to 1 p.m. And his next panel is Between the Cacti, Jim Butcher and Pierce Brown.
That happened yesterday.
Was that yesterday?
That was yesterday.
My schedule's entirely wrong. I don't know what's going on.
Pamela will tell you.
I'm going to be in the Bard's Tower from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. in the dealer's room. Maybe it might be 1 to 2:30.
It's 1 to 2 or 2:30, I forgot.
Yeah, 1 to 2:30.
It's 1 to 2.
1 to 2. Okay, but I'll be in the Bard's Tower, which just look for the giant, tower and display of books, so on there that Wordfire does. So I will see you there then if you want some books signed, and thank you very much.